Princess, put all sections on alert.
Obi-Wan is here. The Force is with him.
People like to point out how Vader not sensing his daughter is a plot hole because he should recognize she is strong with the Force. I don't agree. Here Vader is able to tell Obi-Wan is there because he recognizes his presence. I wonder if everyone has their own presence in the Force. So when Vader feels Leia's presence in the beginning of the movie, it's just an ordinary presence to him. Also, I like how goofy Vader looks in the scene, standing there with his arms bent around his waist the whole time. I know he does that a lot throughout the movie. I just think it's a goofy look. So I initially asked myself, why did the stormtroopers need to blast this elevator door open? Could they not just open it themselves? Now you may point out how this control panel on the side here was probably shot before, which makes sense. In the earlier montage of things getting destroyed, we see this control panel getting shot here. But this is where my questions arise. In this exact shot, the control panel looks completely fine, even though it was shot earlier. But let's just live under the assumption that this thing was shot anyway. Is that how elevators work? If I destroyed the control panel for an elevator, would it make sense that I cannot access the elevator on that floor? Could other people still use the elevator to get to this floor? As far as we know, everything inside the elevator is fine. The control panel inside the elevator is fine. So did the stormtroopers get to this floor and realize the door can't open because the panel on the outside was destroyed? Really weird.
Are there any other ways out of the cell bay? We've been cut off!
I had a funny thought. This cell block clearly has a lot of cells in it. I mean, look how far down the hallway it goes. I wonder how many cells are occupied and if a bunch of these people are just wondering why there's an ongoing blaster fight going on outside. Also, I would be pretty pissed if there was a rescue in my cell block, but no one decided to free me. I bet all these prisoners died when Luke blew up the Death Star. Pretty dark thought.
Some rescue. When you came in here, didn't you have a plan for getting out?
He's the brains, sweetheart!
I have two things to point out here. For one, I just love the banter in this scene. Han is genuinely hilarious, and so is Leia. I just love how she has no qualms about shooting the chute open and jumping down it. The other thing I wanted to point out is how weird of a garbage chute this is. A normal garbage chute has a little door you open and close to drop your trash in, but here it appears that it's a barred off chute. I don't see any hinges here that would allow you to open it, so why is a garbage chute barred off in the first place? You'd think you'd at least want it completely covered so none of the smell goes through. Even Chewbacca points out the smell. Weirdest garbage chute in history. In some of these shots, Luke is missing his left shoulder pad, and in some of the shots, the shoulder pad is there.
Look! Did you see that? What?
I like how Luke sees the Dianoga and points it out, but even though Han is looking in the exact same direction, he doesn't see it. And yes, this thing is called the Dianoga. Now that I think about it, how did the Dianoga even get on the Death Star? How does a giant swamp monster accidentally end up on a top secret space station in the middle of nowhere?
I got a bad feeling about this.
He said it. We all love the obnoxious head bump from this one stormtrooper, but fun fact, in the special edition, Lucas actually added a sound effect to make the bump more noticeable, like it was a louder sound. Also in this one shot, we see 4 blasters by the window, while before there were 3.
They're madmen. They're heading for the prison level. If you hurry, you might catch them.
Follow me.
This was actually really brilliant by 3PO. At first I asked myself, why did 3PO and R2 need to hide in the closet? They end up getting the stormtroopers' attention anyway and telling them where the people who killed the officers went. So they could have just stood outside and waited, right? Well, hiding in the closet gives the moronic stormtroopers the impression that they were locked in there by the criminals, making them look innocent. The stormtroopers are still idiots, considering this is like the 5th time in the movie where if the stormtroopers put an ounce of effort into their job, they could have ended the rebellion. But either way, it's a smart move from 3PO. Have you ever noticed how most of the stormtroopers in this movie are lefties? In the earlier shot, they are all holding their blasters left-handed. I wonder why Lucas directed them to do that.
Are you there, sir?
3PO?
We've had some problems.
Will you shut up and listen to me?
Now that I think about it, Luke was very lucky that the comlink wasn't destroyed when he was underwater for 20 seconds. Good thing they have waterproof versions.
Listen to them. They're dying, R2.
This reaction from 3PO is hilarious. A New Hope low-key has some underrated humor. So Obi-Wan has been wandering around the Death Star for 15 minutes now, at least according to the movie. I love how no one has managed to stop him. We even see officers casually walking right behind him, and none of them managed to point out that an old man in Jedi robes is casually roaming the Death Star.
Just avoid any more female advice. We gotta be able to get out of here. Well, let's get moving.
It's kind of weird to think that Han and Luke wore the Stormtrooper armor over their original clothes. Why did they need to do that? Also, wouldn't it make more sense to keep the Stormtrooper armor on? Even if you lost your helmet, at least you are roaming the Death Star in Imperial clothing.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
I'm gonna have a take that's probably gonna piss off a lot of people. If this movie came out today, a lot of people within a certain section of the fanbase would hate Princess Leia. She matches every characteristic of the type of female characters a certain section of the fanbase hates. She's bossy, ungrateful, she tells all the men what to do, and earlier she made the men seem incompetent. The only reason these people don't hate Leia is because this movie is a part of the original trilogy. Therefore, they would never criticize it. Go watch Captain Marvel reviews, and when they describe why they hate that character, she shares a lot of similarities with Leia.
What was that? That's nothing.
Another moment where the sheer incompetence of the Stormtroopers shines through.
You came in that thing? You're braver than I thought.
Nice, come on.
I can't believe I just noticed that Han and Luke kept their Stormtrooper belts on. I've watched this movie dozens of times and I didn't notice that until right now. I just assumed they always had that belt.
It's them. Blast them.
This moment here is just inexcusable. Sure, all the other times where they were incompetent, you can just say the Stormtroopers were idiots, but what the hell happened here? Why are they all running away? I swear, some people will still defend this scene, but there is nothing to defend. Do you know how hard it is for the Stormtroopers to miss this many shots here? I've heard the defense that the Stormtroopers were given orders to let them escape so they can find their rebel base. I don't buy that. The last time we saw Vader and Tarkin together, Tarkin said he put the entire base on alert and that Obi-Wan cannot be allowed to escape. Vader then leaves to confront Obi-Wan. The next time we see these two together in the movie, it appears they've already discussed the plan to let them escape. So at some point between these two scenes, they discussed letting the rebels escape. When that is, I'll let you decide. But if I had to guess, it would be right after Vader fought Obi-Wan and the Falcon took off. But even if it was earlier and the Stormtroopers were told to let the rebels escape, they appear to be just as incompetent as every single other point in the movie. Also, if the Stormtroopers were told to let the rebels escape at this point in the movie, why would they try and close the blast doors on Han in a few minutes? I don't buy that they were acting incompetent on purpose. Just accept this movie as goofy and move on.
Here, hold this.
So we established that this belt was from the Stormtrooper armor that they were wearing before. But when on Earth would Stormtrooper armor have this kind of cable? What purpose could it serve? Do Stormtroopers need to climb walls or any elevated surface regularly? This R2 looking droid in the background is the same droid we saw in the background of this other Obi-Wan shot 12 minutes ago.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
This scene here is another moment people say the Obi-Wan show ruined, and I completely disagree. If this is the first time they have met since Mustafar, it feels so anticlimactic. For one, Obi-Wan calling Vader Darth always felt weird. And listen, I get that this was the first Star Wars movie and back then Darth was actually his first name. But if you're going to point to moments in the prequels and say they enhance the originals, it's only fair that you can point to other aspects of the prequels and say they hurt the originals. There should be a lot of emotions between these two when they meet again for the first time, which there was in the Obi-Wan show. This feels like another encounter between the two. They've already expressed their feelings and they've moved on. So moments like these I feel are totally enhanced by the Obi-Wan show. Also in some of these shots, if you look closely, Vader's belt buckle is flipped. In this one shot, you can see that the wall is damaged before Vader's lightsaber hits the wall.
You can't win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
This line seems odd at first coming from Obi-Wan. Given the Obi-Wan we know, he's never talked about a power like this, but knowing what he actually means is becoming a Force ghost, it makes sense. People can say the sequels ruined Force ghosts, but I completely disagree. I'm going to dive deeper into that way in the future, so you'll just have to wait to get my full opinions on Force ghosts. In this one shot, after Chewbacca and Han walk into frame, you can see shadows behind them, most likely of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher waiting to enter the scene. All these stormtroopers abandoning the Falcon is another instance of how incompetent they are. I was doing some thinking about this scene. Obi-Wan is the only person here who knows that all three Skywalkers are in proximity to each other. People like to point to Obi-Wan seeing Luke and Leia reunited as a touching moment for him. Sure, in hindsight this is true, but frankly Obi-Wan must be surprised Leia is even here. R2 found out about Leia being on the Death Star after Obi-Wan left to turn off the tractor beam, so this must be a good surprise for Obi-Wan.
Run, Luke, run.
This movie features the only times a Force Ghost ever communicates with someone in the middle of a conflict. Every other time a Force Ghost appears, it's always during a time where the person is alone and in need of guidance. I wonder why throughout the rest of the trilogy, Obi-Wan didn't continue to guide Luke. In the next movie, Obi-Wan tells Luke that he simply cannot interfere, whatever that means. Is that a plot hole? To some it should be. Why could Obi-Wan interfere here but not later in the trilogy?
Can't believe he's gone.
Hey Luke, did you know I also knew Obi-Wan really well? He once saved me from an Imperial Inquisitor. It was a really crazy few days in my life where I almost died. In all seriousness, we get a scene of Luke mourning a guy he just became close with maybe a day ago, but we get no scene of Leia mourning her parents and her entire planet. In hindsight, why bother sending TIE fighters after the Falcon? It's clear in a few scenes that Vader wants the Falcon to escape so they can find the Rebel base. So why waste 4 TIE fighters? One might argue that they don't want Leia to think this was all a trap to let them escape, so they fake sent some TIE fighters. Makes sense, but Leia realizes it's a trap anyway, so this whole plan was nonsense. Also, what were the stormtroopers told to do? Were they not told to destroy the Falcon and their TIE fighters? If they weren't, what if they did actually destroy the Millennium Falcon? And if they were told to not destroy the Millennium Falcon, then you're basically sending them to their deaths. I wouldn't have agreed to that. Also, what's stopping Han from jumping into hyperspace here? We've seen dozens of times in Star Wars ships avoiding dogfights by jumping into hyperspace. So again, what's stopping Han? This entire sequence here is really awesome. There's not much to overanalyze. The music is great, the action is tense, it's well directed. Everything about the scene is just perfect to me. Nothing much to add here.
That's it! We did it!
We did it!
What the fuck did you do, Leia? You're not allowed to say we did it. You just sat there.
Help! I think I'm melting. This is all your fault.
You know, maybe Han had a point about buckling up earlier in the movie. 3PO should have listened.
Sure, the homing beacon is secure aboard their ship. Taking an awful risk.
Well, it clearly didn't work. Now that I think about it, it's Vader's fault the Death Star blew up. It's implied here that it was Vader's idea to let them escape with the plans. Not once does he ever take accountability for this.
Let us go. It's the only explanation for the ease of our escape.
Easy? You call that easy?
They're tracking us.
Wait a minute. So Leia is clearly aware that the Empire is tracking them. You'd think that makes her smart, right? Wrong. She willingly led the Empire to the Rebel base. This is incredibly reckless. Remember earlier in the film she lied about the location of the Rebel base when her planet was being threatened? It seems odd that here she would be so willing to let the Empire track her to that Rebel base. She should have made a pit stop somewhere and switched ships or something. If it weren't for Luke hitting a 1 in a million shot, Leia would be at fault for the destruction of the rebellion. Also, during this whole conversation, they still aren't in hyperspace. Why? The Empire can still send TIE fighters after you. Don't you remember how far away you were when you first arrived and you found that one TIE fighter so far away?
Still out of spirit. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think a princess and a guy like me?
No.
So Han is clearly thinking about Leia romantically, which makes sense. But keep in mind that Leia in this movie is 19 years old and Han is 32 years old. Not the most outrageous thing in the world, but it does raise some eyebrows. I like how after Luke says no, Han just smiles. He's like, yeah, this kid is into her. And she ends up being his sister. Click on the link here to watch Overanalyzing Star Wars A New Hope Part 5. If you don't see the link, the video hasn't come out yet. Thank you everyone so much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to unite the Glon Squad, and I will see you guys next time.